a great one in Dave Wells.
Yes, we all did. So let's talk and remember Dave right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure you check out and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, as well as all the other traditional podcasting platforms that are available. We are also on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays, and you can email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Well, Ulysses, normally we try to make jokes and have fun and enjoy talking baseball, and we normally do on this podcast, but this might be a little bit more of a somber remembrance episode as we react to the passing of Dave Wells at just 58 years old. Just crazy to think about that. Where, I mean, it's like the day before he died, not to just get right into it, but like I saw tweets from him, like multiple tweets interacting with fans and listeners and just people out there. And a day later, he's gone. It boggles the mind. And I know it's, been a couple days, obviously, since his passing. We just, for, a couple different reasons, we wanted to kind of sit on this a little bit and just, I think now's the time where we can kind of remember Dave Wills for all the greatness that he was and all the memories that he brought to the broadcast booth.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that he was interacting with fans on Saturday on the last game that he called, because isn't that just so apropos? You know,
Mm-hmm.
That's who he was. He was so jovial. So many times you see him around in the draft room. At least I did in the last few seasons, and he was always stopping and talking to fans and answering any requests for photographs. He was always there, man. And it's going to be a really difficult season as a Rays fan to listen to Rays radio and his booming voice, because boy, he had a booming voice, and it won't be there. And I know that for me specifically, I like I said on Monday's episode, Rays radio for me was the 2013 season. I had heard obviously Rays radio before, but
Mm-hmm.
really to follow a season through Rays radio, 2013 was for me. You know this. I was a delivery driver in college, and you know all of my tales that I will not mention
Yeah.
on this podcast. But within those tales, um, it was there was Dave and Andy, in between those stops, and arm side fastball when when David Price was a little bit off. It was great to hear Dave saying, "Oh, our arm side fastball is really not working for David today." It's gonna suck, man. But I
Yeah.
I think we all have our memories with him, and that's something that nobody can take away from us.
Yeah. And just the combo of Dave Wills and Andy Fried. Obviously, Andy Fried's going to continue on with, I presume, Neil Solondz and maybe a cast of other characters, but it is going to be near impossible. And you really can't replicate the chemistry that Dave and Andy had. I mean, I know that, if there's one criticism of them, really, I mean, if you're talking about best radio broadcast teams in baseball and really all of sports, I mean, they're right up there. I mean, just as far as
Yeah,
baseball goes, to me, it's, Bob Uecker, the San Francisco Giants, what they have going on with John Miller and Dave Fleming, and then the Rays, and you can kind of put them in any order you want with that. And I know that some people say, yeah, it's hard to differentiate sometimes between Dave and Andy's voice, and I get that, but it was almost an odd couple in a sense at times, and just the back and forth. And you can tell that, and I want to loop Andy into this too, is just, you've got something special on your hands where there were times where I didn't even need to turn on the television or want to watch the television, a Rays broadcast. It's like, man, Dave and Andy do such a good job together. They're such a great team. They are so vivid and paint the picture so well, not to mention all the back and forth and the side conversations that they're having, that I'd rather go for a drive or run an errand or work out at the gym and listen to them. Like, to me, I mean, the makings of a really, really good broadcast team or broadcaster is where I've reached my destination and I'm still tuning into these guys. And I think Dave
Yes.
and Andy did a great job of that.
Very well put. It's when you are at your destination, but you have to wait for that last out. You have to wait until you can go inside. I it's very difficult for, I think, people our age and younger to get into radio. We're very visual people, millennials and onwards, 90s kids and on. It's difficult to get into radio with baseball. And if you didn't have a necessity to listen to radio for baseball needs, then you don't have that ear, and you need to kind of train that ear for baseball. And they made it so easy to fall in love with baseball being broadcast through radio. I mean, the way of using the imagery of letting you know who's smiling, who is sweating, who is being clumsy in the field, if the pitcher is looks rattled, if the umpire's strike zone is a little bit too thin or too wide, if Madden is going crazy, if Cash is a little bit inactive, every little thing, they're painting a picture, and he was really, really good at that. And when you talk about the partnership between Dave and Andy, I mean, inseparable, man. And I know that they had been working since 2005 together. So when you talk about, like any relationship, with more time, you get to know the other person even better. And they knew each other. I mean, they were just in the same wavelength. And I know that we've gotten emails and DMs saying, that they see that we are sometimes in the same wavelength. That's because we've known each other for such a long time. And Dave and Andy did the same thing. They knew each other for a long time. So it was really good to see that chemistry, or at least not see it. You heard it. And we all have our favorite memories from the radio broadcasts.
Absolutely. And we'll continue this conversation as well. But first, we have to tell you about FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel because it is America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no sweat first bet for up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and incredibly easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet for up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/lockedon. That's fanduel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, to learn more. Be sure to make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And Ulises, I'm glad you touched on that, as the chemistry between Dave and Andy, and just as a listener and an outside observer, you get to know the broadcasters too behind the scenes, their lives, because they have 3-4 hours to fill every night, 162 games a year, plus playoffs, plus spring training, plus the off-season podcast and specials and episodes. So you learn that Dave Wills lives in Lutz, and he has
Yeah.
children and he has a wife and he's from the Chicagoland area. And it's just, you really get inside the background of some of these guys. And, you know, the thing that I never really got the chance to meet or interact with Dave Wills, but I know people that did and only heard nothing but positives. I've got a really good friend that kind of utilized Dave as a mentor, and from my understanding, was very responsive and always kind of the hey, keep doing what you're doing, follow your dreams. You can make it work in the sports industry, which is really really appreciative. Just to me, I get the sense that, and I've interacted with Andy uh, very briefly, but just two very, very down to earth guys that obviously know and understand and have a tremendous love for what they do and the game of baseball as well. And it's funny because with Dave specifically, um, he was old school in terms of his broadcasting style and analysis, but it was a common sense nature. It was more, hey, he's probably not going to be talking about ex-woba and meltdowns and some of the statistics you see on Savant or Fangraphs, but the eye test, the coach's eye, and being able to interpret, hey, what's going on the field in real time, I think was a really, really special quality of his and Andy's as well. But just it's not like he was an old fuddy duddy when he was telling what was happening on the field.
Like I said, he was open minded. He was old school but open minded. Like
Yeah,
he knew he might not say, "Oh, his ex Woba is whatever, 380," but he wouldn't poo poo it. He wouldn't be like, "Oh, yeah, all that stuff, the ex Woba, I don't care about WRC plus." Like, no, he wouldn't say that.
yeah,
He said, "Hey, the Rays are doing this, and it's because they see things differently." I think that's a great balance, and maybe that's why we all like so much that Dave and Andy. It's because there was balance. There was. I mean, there was a lot of homerism, in
yes,
Rays radio, and like in any other team's, radio broadcast booth, there will be some homerism. But I did love that Dave and Andy. Maybe in my opinion, um, they go a little bit, and I'm only talking about Dave and Andy. Dave and Andy were a little bit more comfortable with pushing the envelope of criticism
hmm,
more than anybody else. I'm talking post, pregame, TV, everything. I think
yeah,
Dave and Andy were and I think it's because of the radio. Because when the camera's not there,
right,
maybe you feel a little bit safer to say things that you might not feel as safe when the red light comes on, as Evan Klosky, our friend, would
yes,
say. So I do appreciate that. And I think Rays fans do appreciate that because, you're going to get your homerism, but you also want to, if somebody's struggling, if somebody's hitting 160 for 4 months, you can't just tell me, well, the guy's a great glove.
yeah,
No, I need you as a fan. I need you to tell me that how frustrating it is that this guy's hitting 160. And Dave, you could hear that. You
right,
could hear that he was like, "Boy, I'm watching the same thing, guys.
yeah.
It's frustrating and then see this guy hit 160." And that's what you appreciate.
Especially whenever the team was on a 5 or 6 game losing streak or somebody was on a 2 for 30 slump, whatever it may be, he wasn't afraid to call it out, nor Andy for that matter. And I
Yeah.
do like how you mentioned open-minded because working for the Rays, especially since 2005, yeah, you can have that old school mentality, if you will, but with what they did in innovating the game between the openers, the platoons, the bullpenning, the shifts, everything that they utilized and deployed, it was like, hey, it's working. You're going to have to get on board at some point and kind of embrace it or at least realize what the Rays are trying to do there. And I got to tell you, I mean, look, Dwayne Stats and Brian Anderson, they do a great job. Everybody on the television side does a great job, but it takes a special talent to do what Andy and Dave do game in and game out. Because with television, you have the visual element to help you out,
Yeah.
to let the broadcast breathe. Dwayne Stats and Brian Anderson, they can go 15, 20 seconds without talking, without really saying a
Yeah.
word. They can kick it down to Trisha Whitaker. They can go to a highlight reel or a highlight, whatever it may be. But if you, because I did this, because I would actually sometimes prefer to listen to the radio broadcast as I'm watching the game or streaming the game, and just how descriptive and on the ball that both Dave and Andy were. It's really, really remarkable. Not late on calls, not boring, not gimmicky. Like how quickly their brain has to fire and what they have to do to detail a play in a matter of seconds, in a matter of moments. That is a tough thing to do. And that was also part of the joy. And I'm sure, Neil and Andy are going to do this going forward, but interchanging the play-by-play between innings. I think that was
Yes.
a fun add too, as opposed to the traditional or typical, okay, you have the play-by-play guy and you have the color analyst who's a former coach, manager, ball player, whatever it may be. And it kind of gets static and it maybe gets a little boring, for lack of a better term, but it kind of kept everybody on their toes and I think kept both those guys fresh as well, and being able to interchange innings uh, and work on, hey, I'm play by play now. I'm going to be the analyst and flipping that back and forth a little bit.
Not only does it keep it fresh, Kevin, but it also gives the listener kind of a new voice. And so in your
Yeah,
brain, it's like, oh, I'm not listening to the same thing. Oh, this is new. And also, you can't have I'm the same guy calling the big moments all the time, right?
right.
If you kind of change it here and there, you get a good moment, I get a good moment, we will forever hear Dave's voice when Aki takes it to second and the Rays are
Hmm.
going to the World Series. That's Dave. We have that. Or Evan Longoria has just hit the Rays into the wild card in 2011. Like we have that. I do like the fact that they did the play by play, and I hope Andy and I'm guessing Neil is going to get the call
Yeah.
up to do that. It has not been confirmed, correct?
I honestly have no idea. I remember seeing, I think Topkin put something out like that's kind of the obvious there, because Neil had,
Right.
when one of them was missing, he would fill in, and it's kind of the
Sure.
natural progression for the pre-post game guy to get that next push or step. I mean, that's sort of what Dave Wills, he got to start doing pre and post game for the Chicago White Sox. So I think that's going to have to, I mean, that's really, I think, the only play that the Rays have, unless they're able to work in some of their television crew into the radio broadcast. Like I like to see, Denard Span maybe get some radio action. Matt Joyce gets some radio action. Trisha Whitaker, I think, if you want to think outside the box, maybe give her a shot and give her a try, or
Yeah.
at least try to interwove her into the radio broadcast. But I got to say, and again, I know I've made my jokes about Neil Solondz and do my impressions and everything, and this is no disrespect to him, but you have very, 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 very big shoes to fill. The old adage, the old saying is, you don't want to be the guy to replace the man. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy that replaced the man. I know I'm kind of
Yeah.
butchering that saying, but you
No,
get the
no.
point. Like, yeah,
If you don't want to be Matt Duffy,
right, yeah.
Evan Longoria leaves. You don't want to be Matt Duffy. You want to be Yandy
You want to be
replacing Matt Duffy.
yeah, anybody that replaces Matt Duffy, you're okay with that. Anybody that
Yeah.
replaces Longo, that is tough to do.
You're gonna have a tough time, but you said the fact that they were able to use so much imagery and get you into the game and not have the aid of television. One of my fondest memories, and it's a fond memory, but it's also kind of a heart gut-wrenching moment was I was driving home, and Dave and Andy, this is around 2010. I'm pretty sure it was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to the race game, but all of a sudden, they're saying, "Oh, there's a perfect game going on," and I think you already know where I'm going with this.
Right.
Perfect game going on, 7th, 8th inning, all perfect game, and then in the 9th inning, Dave and Andy go, "Oh no, Joyce, what did you do?" And I'm like, "What happened? What happened?" Armando Galarraga, of course, Venezuelan bump, is throwing a perfect game in Detroit. Joyce botches the call, and Dave and Andy are having to balance both this historic baseball moment that is
Mm-hmm.
not Rays related, and yet having to tell the Rays fan what is going on with the Rays game at the same time. And they did that so smoothly. I mean,
Yes.
incredible. So that's actually one of the best memories I have of Rays radio. Of course, everybody will have the 2008 runs, the 2020 runs, of course, trying to sink in Rays radio so you don't have to hear Joe Buck and everybody and John
Yeah.
Smoltz talking crap. And whoever was the one that said, how did they call the playoffs that one year?
Oh, in the post.
Oh, in the post.
Yeah,
Yeah, in
Ron
the post, he
Darling
has a
and
post. Oh my gosh.
yeah, I
That
can't
was
even
horrible.
remember. Maybe Brian Anderson was part of that. Not Ray's Brian Anderson, but
Yeah.
the other Brian Anderson broadcaster.
Or the guy from the Mets guy, I'm blanking, Ron Darling?
Yeah, Ron Darling. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
TBS. So yeah. Yeah, over different. I don't know if that's the one I could come up with that it's kind of outside the box. I'm sure
yeah,
not a lot of race fans are going to pick Armando
right.
Galarraga's perfect game as their Rays radio memory, but that's of course Venezuelan bump for me. Do you have one?
I don't know if I have one specifically. It's just what I really enjoyed was the in between conversations, not necessarily about baseball, but their lives and just what's going on in the world. And the downtime in the game. Maybe there's a pitching change, or there's 5 or 6 pickoffs, or it takes a particular pitcher a minute or 50 seconds to deliver the ball from mound to home plate. Just having that extra breathing room to kind of get your points across and tell your stories and whatever it may be. And that's honestly going to be a challenge this year for Andy, and not only working with a new broadcaster, day in and day out, but this is a literally a new ball game. This is a faster paced era that we're moving towards, with fewer pickoff throws and 15 20 seconds in between pitches. Like, it's going to get moving. So I think that the radio crews are going to lose a little bit of that. Hey, we're just kind of easing in, sitting at the bar and talking sports. Like, you kind of got to
Yeah.
hurry things up a little bit to some extent, or it's going to take better, I guess, timing on everybody to make it work.
Not a lot of personal tangents and all of that. It's going to be a little bit more tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I I do like I want to give one other one, and it's not like a specific memory, but I did really always enjoy when he said, "Boy, da 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 da." Because anytime he started with the word boy, it's like what he wanted to say.
Yeah.
Like, boy, Choi is mightily struggling 0 for 20, but
Right.
like he always, when he started with boy, you're like, oh, okay, he's gonna drop a bomb
Yeah.
here. So yeah, I always enjoyed that from Dave.
Yeah. What's funny is that, whenever I was in Lutz, I would honestly think of Dave, because there were so many callbacks and flashbacks to, hey, living in Lutz, or, I woke up
Yeah,
this morning at my house in Lutz, and I'm pretty sure I knew which neighborhood he lived in. And I may or may not have golfed at that neighborhood that he lives in. And I would always think, Dave Willis, what are the odds that I might see him,
yeah.
out drinking coffee in the morning or whatever it may be. So you really get inside the minds and the lives of these guys. And I mean, I know kind of a tangent, but and we mentioned it already, but the there are some major changes for the Rays broadcast teams. Obviously, on the radio side, and I'll be curious to see what they do with pre and post game duties. I don't know if it's going to go to somebody already on the DAE staff or they call up. I think Patrick Canis, whatever his name is, from the Durham Bulls. I mean, there's a lot of different options out there, I presume. But on the television side, I mean, Orestes Estrada's no more. Again, giving more action to Denard Span and Matt Joyce, friend of the program. Dwayne Stats at 70 years old, he's tapering things back. He's going to be working 20 to 30 fewer games. So, that works in an opening for, Rich Hollenberg and I don't know, Kevin Burkhardt. I mean, I'm sure, they'll have some options, but things are changing. Things are changing in the broadcast world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of new, different voices. I don't know if Xavier Scruggs is gonna join
Oh yeah.
the team this season too. So yeah, it's going to be a new season with a lot of changes on the field. But if you're a Rays fan, you're going to see a lot of old familiar faces, but new to their posts. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Before we wrap it up here, I do want to give some listener shout outs and comments, just some of their favorite memories and sayings from Dave Wills, who again passed away, unfortunately, at 58 years old. Man, enjoy life, enjoy the moments, cherish the moments, because you never know, uh, when your last day is. I mean,
Yeah.
so unfortunate what happened to Gene Ramirez with the Rays organization. Around really this week, we've heard and learned that Kyle Manzardo's mom at 50 something years old is dealing with
Yeah.
a major heart issue and needs a transplant. So, and that goes back to a larger point of you never know what's going on in the lives of not just broadcasters but players and their families as well. That so many
Yes.
distractions, either positively or negatively, that they have to deal with off the field too. But Samuel Bayless says, I remember last year an opposing pitcher cut his finger and he came out with the cut Mick line from Rocky. Dave had such a quick wit and was extremely funny. He always replied when I contacted him on Twitter. Genuinely loved us as fans. Loved when we took off other announcers. I don't know if he had some typos in there, but Sam basically his point is correct. And if you reached out to Dave on Twitter, social media, he was very, very good about getting back to you and responding. And during the game too, that was also kind of
Yeah.
part of the fun as
Very
well.
cool.
Sam checks in from Australia, and this is what
Yeah.
he has to say. So AJ says, quote, he needed that extra biscuit for breakfast. Ball hit to the warning track. Quote, they left a little chicken on the bone. Runners left in scoring position. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Rays win, Rays win, Rays win. Yeah, those were all signature calls of Dave Will. Of course, I butchered it. Did not have as much passion, energy, or talent on those calls there. But yeah, that is something that is stored in the memory bank for sure. Don Dougherty says, Rays win, Rays win, Rays win. So saddened by his passing. Brian Stark says, quote, Evan Longoria has just hit the Rays to the American League wild card. Again, another one of Dave Will's legendary quotes. And then Ty McCann says, I grew up listening to this man, deployed twice, and many nights woke up early to listen to Rays games. And whenever I was driving in the car and couldn't catch the game, I'd put Dave and Andy on. Living in New England, I'd often sync the radio to the TV just so I watched the game but avoid listening to Dennis Eckersley and Dave O'Brien. I did the same during the 2020 playoffs, and I had some of the most fun I've had watching baseball listening to the broadcast. To me, Dave was the voice of the Rays, just like Dwayne Stats. He will be forever missed so long as I'm watching baseball. May he rest in peace. I mean, that deserves a standing ovation from Ty. That really puts it all perfectly, really.
Yeah, Ty, you're making me tear up here, man. Like that's beautifully put, Ty. And I think you are voicing what a lot of us race fans are feeling and have felt about Dave. And he will forever be remembered if you're a Rays fan. Which is a pretty cool thing. We always want to leave our mark in this world. We know that we only have a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of time, and we don't know how much time that is going to be. Dave is going to be remembered. Like that's so
Yeah.
fantastic, and he gave us so many great memories. So, yes, it is sad, but anytime that we want to remember good times, especially Rays baseball memories, he's going to be there. And
Yeah.
that in of itself is a really nice treat that he let us in and he
And
gave
not to
us.
be the idea man here, but I think the Rays should rename their press box or the broadcast booth, Dave Will's press box, something along those lines. That's one thing that they should do. The other thing that they should do is induct him into their Hall of Fame in 2024. I don't know if they can necessarily do it this season, but make sure I'm sure that the Rays are going to think this one through and add him to the fold. I would guess as soon as next year. I think those are two things that absolutely need to happen.
And I would like to add a third one. It's not an original idea of mine. I saw it on Twitter from
Okay,
Ben Sack. He said, I would love to see an annual Dave Wills Day. He'll be missed by us all.
I like
I
that.
think that is a beautiful, perfect idea. I said on my tweet, there is nothing in this world that 100% of the people will agree on. I think we actually might find the outlier
Yeah.
in the fact that I think 100% of Rays fans would support the idea of making a Dave Wills Day at the Trop. I think that would be such a cool thing. And, depending on how crazy it is or something, you could have his booming voice,
Hmm.
saying Rays win, Rays win, Rays win after victories. That would be something that could be done. I don't know.
Do
I thought
a
that was
do a,
good
a
idea.
bobblehead giveaway and a Hawaiian shirt giveaway. Really lean into it a little bit. And
Yeah,
that was the thing. I
yeah,
mean, I think all Rays fans love Dave and Andy, and especially Dave, of course, but even non-Rays fans. I mean, opposing teams and their fan bases, I think, revere the the talent and the work ethic that both of them had. I mean, I'd heard, seen quotes on because Fangraphs does their annual broadcaster rankings, and I saw comments where it's like they knew more about the Twins players than the Twins broadcast team did. I mean, they're
yeah.
playing the highlight call for Dave and Andy for another team because they're so good. Like
Right.
Mark Burley's, I guess his perfect game. Like on MLB Network Radio, they use Dave Will's call instead of the White Sox call.
Look at that.
Like that's crazy. And the other thing too and I'm glad that Ty mentioned this, but during the 2020 season when Dave and Andy weren't able to go on the road, you really couldn't tell the difference. That's how good they were, just by the fact that they're not even able to travel on the road. They're basically having to do radio broadcasting from mini monitors within the Trop with no fans, and to make it still sound as quality as it did was really a testament to them as well, and their production team too. But that was
Yeah.
another kind of nice tie-in as well with that. So, man, yeah. So, of course, I'm sure we'll see some YouTube comments, and yeah, lay it all out there with your thoughts for Dave Wills. And if you get a chance to support the charities that he was very passionate about, I know Buddy Baseball was one that was very near and dear to his heart. Great cause there. Again, if you want to, I know we're going long here, but if things are tough in your life and you don't, having a difficult time with whatever you have going on, just go to a Buddy Baseball game or just kind of read about that organization and what they do, and it'll bring some
Yes.
joy and light to you with that. So anyway, thank you again for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. Hope you all Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.